No, it ain't easy being me. Will I see the penitentiary or will I stay free? It ain't easy being me. Will I see the penitentiary or will I stay free?
The United States holds more people in captivity than anywhere else in the world, not just per capita, but also in raw numbers. The U.S. has around 1/20th of the global population. However, it holds around 1/4 of the total prison population. This statistic is alarming, and the effects it has on communities across the nation can hardly be discerned in its entirety in just a short amount of time. How we got to where we are today has a long history that starts right after slavery quote-unquote ended with the passing of the 13th Amendment. However, the policymakers made sure to include a clause that made prisoners exempt from this right. This is where it all begins for us. Beginning in the 19th century, prisons went from being a place to be punished and executed to a place where you are punished and then put to work to generate revenue and then executed. This is where convict leasing began to see popularity. Convict leasing, which is basically legal slavery, is where private businesses could lease prisoners from the state penitentiary to do their work for them at a small fee to the state. The state, realizing they can make more money this way, started arresting formerly enslaved African Americans at a highly disproportionate rate. Convict leasing eventually became illegal, but the system that it upheld continued to ravage through the United States and is still seen today.
Will I see the penitentiary or will I stay free? It ain't easy being me. Will I see the penitentiary or will I stay free?
The prison industrial complex is a term that is thrown around more and more frequently in modern times. It describes the relationship between private industries and imprisonment, how private interests affect how many people get arrested and what they are forced to do after they are incarcerated. The first modern private prison started in 1984 in Tennessee. This was the state contracting prisons to private industries so they could save money and so the market can gain revenue. For a state-funded prison, the price of keeping an inmate may cost $200 a day. If a private corporation comes along and says, as long as you guys can keep giving us a steady stream of prisoners, we can house a prisoner for you for only $175 a day. The state then pays the private prison $175 per inmate, and the prison has free range to change whatever they want to increase profits, including reducing wages, reducing sanitary requirements, and having the prisoners themselves reproduce their own environment. In the end, the private prison really could be paying $150 per inmate, charging $175, and still be seen as a net positive for both the state and the private sector. Today, this is a multi-billion-dollar industry with $11 billion of total revenue generated per year, $9 billion of which goes back into keeping the system alive. Due to the high profitability of this newfound labor, the number of prisons overall increased, and the laws that consider someone to be criminal were expanded. As state-funded psychiatric institutions, which acted similarly to prisons, started to close, the prisonable population grew, meaning that now prisons had a disproportionate amount of black people, poor people, and mentally unwell people. This procedure really started during the war on crime and accelerated through the war on drugs during the Nixon administration and has continued through administration after administration until today. These new policies impacted minority communities the most, with officers now allowed to and encouraged by the state to stop and frisk if they are suspicious. Police violence and retaliation against it has risen in recent times, which has helped shine a light on one of the worst aspects of our country.
Will I see the penitentiary or will I stay free? It ain't easy.
The psychological effects that prison has on the inmates is something that is not seen often in the free world. In prison, you are watched, observed, or examined every second of your existence. You are forced to follow the instructions and time slots without questioning the authority, and if you resist, you are met with punishment. That is the basic layout of how prisoners are manipulated into doing whatever the prison wants them to, including work. Around 2/3 of all inmates in the U.S. also work a prison job. Most of these jobs are janitorial, maintenance jobs to keep the prison running autonomously. There usually isn't a high amount of technically advanced jobs, just production of materials or goods to be sold. In prison, there actually is a minimum wage, however, it's so minuscule that it's laughable to even mention. 37 cents an hour is the highest minimum wage average. Then, 80% of that money is taken out for a prison upkeep fee or other expenses. The rest of the money you keep can be spent on overpriced toothpaste, ramen noodles, or a phone call home. Despite what companies want you to believe, most of these jobs have been de-skilled and alienated to the point that they leave no room for professional advancement in that field of work. Hiring ex-convicts is also seen as taboo for many employers, leaving very few options for full-time employment once released. If you resist working, you can be denied commissary, be sent to solitary, or get an extended prison sentence. The state of the home in which these inmates come from can vary widely. For a large portion of the prisoner population, their families relied heavily on the inmates' monetary income to support themselves. Arresting these individuals not only causes the inmate to lose all income, but it drastically damages the ability of the inmate's family to survive. This is a big cause of destitution in poor communities. If at least one family member is in prison, that's potentially a whole income gone in an instant. When most people in poverty are a few bad months away from homelessness and using crime to survive, it is insanely difficult to get out of this financial loop. Social reproduction only advances this cycle until eventually there are clear class and racial divisions in the United States.
It ain't easy being me. Will I see the penitentiary or will it stay free?
Reformation of private prisons and prison life in general is a hefty task that is seldom done without full abolition. So maybe we should start there. The mere idea of a for-profit prison system is inhumane, backwards, and harmful to us all. The private prisons routinely lobby policymakers to keep the system the way it is. Completely eradicating private prisons is a big step forward, but the issues would still persist in the public sector. The second step is to decriminalize minor drug offenses, sex work, and nonviolent petty crimes. Nobody should have to serve time in prison for smoking or fear for their life that they might get arrested or trafficked due to consenting sex practices that are now deemed illegal. As much as prisons want to be seen as grounds for rehabilitation, it has been shown time and time again that our system is the most inefficient at actually attaining this goal. The third and final step is to truly focus on rehabilitation and recovery back into the free world. Luckily for us, other countries have already started doing this and have given us an ample model on how we can implement them in the United States today. Will we ever actually obtain this goal? Who knows? But until then, it is important to understand the history and effects that the prison system has had on building our nation.
Or will I stay free? It ain't easy being me. Will I see the penitentiary or will it stay free? I can't sleep, niggas plotting on me. Kill me while I'm dreaming. Wake up sweaty and screaming, cause I can hear them suckers scheming. Probably paranoid. Problem is them post be fantasizing. A brother bite the bullet, open fire